ours and ICANN. The term of office is different for each of the regions members. You can see that on the website, and also next slide, a bit more detail. And yeah, importantly, what are the roles, responsibilities? So the AC, the oversees global PDP, global policy development process, advises the ICANN board on internet number resource matters, provides expert input about ongoing discussions, existing policies, what may be coming around the corner. The AC also appoints board members to, individuals to ICANN bodies, such as the ICANN board, seats 9 and 10, and also the ICANN NAMCOM. And yeah, if that doesn't keep us busy enough, we have a lot of due diligence to do with our procedures to make sure that we can conduct our business accordingly. And yeah, meetings are once a month, usually the first Wednesday of every month, and also face-to-face annually, pandemic permitting. And yeah, I'm happy to say that this week has been a very productive week when the whole AC finally got together for the first time in, I don't know, since 2019 or something. Yeah, so first, yeah, now a quick look at the members, the current members. I won't go through them all individually. You can do it at your own leisure. I have a list here of the region, the members and their associated regions and their terms. Quick mention, Kevin Bloomberg was elected as the chair of the AC. He represents the Aran region, and he selected Hervé Clement from the IPNCC as his vice chair, along with Mike Silber from Afrinic. So recent election or announcement, so Gaurav Kansal for APNIC has been elected to replace Shubham. And yeah, you'll see a TBC in Afrinic where our colleague Wafa stepped down in 2022. And yeah, it's that seat is pending appointment from the Afrinic board. So the global PDP, there's a full process defined and it's available on the website. I've included a link to that. Anyone within any of the RIOs can propose a global internet policy, and yeah, that needs to go through obviously some guardrails that we oversee, and yeah, obviously the AC members are keeping abreast of policy discussions to see if there's any such topics being proposed or discussed. And yeah, if something does land, if a global policy proposal does land, we have a facilitator team in place, which is Nicole, Martin, Sander, Saul, and Jorge. And yeah, I've included a list to the current list of global policies. There's not been a new policy in quite some years, but yeah, it's good to review. So transparency is very important to us, of course, and we take it seriously. So our annual face-to-face is open to observers. So we got together this week on Monday and Tuesday, 9 to 12, both days. And lucky enough, we had some people join as well, some observers, which is nice to see, always welcome. I'm telling you after the event now, so it's a bit too late. But next meeting, I think it could be the next upcoming ICANN in March, but I'm not too sure. Let's see, that's yet to be decided. Yeah, we have a mailing list archive, and it's open to the public as well, of course. So meeting minutes, open discussions are held there, and anyone can access them. The monthly teleconferences, as I said previously, is usually the first Wednesday of every month at 12 p.m. UTC time. They're open to observers, and we can come along. And yeah, on the website there's a published meeting calendar, so you can see what's planned. And also at the end of every year, the AC performs an internal review of our transparency to make sure that yeah, we've provided enough visibility on our work, and yeah, see if there's any improvements that can be made going forward. So to the ICANN body appointments. So this year was the turn of seat 10. That entire process started September last year when they called for nominations and concluded in May of this year. The entire process is available and published online, and the link that I've included. And yeah, big congratulations to Mr. Kaufman, who you might recognize from the RIPE region. Seat number 9 is occupied by Mr. Alan Barrett from the Afrinic region. His term started in 2021 and it goes into 2024. And yeah, Baresh Yan was appointed as the ASO representative to the ICANN NAMCOM for next year. Reappointed, I must say, 'cause he also occupies that seat this year. So yeah, we're also conducting quite a heavy workload at the moment, which is reviewing the operating procedures. So that's you know, the guidelines, the guardrails of how we perform our work. You know, so that's something we've gone through quite a bit over the past couple of days in person, and it kicked off that entire piece of work back in June of this year. We're targeting mid next year to complete. I think due to other timelines, it'll be March next year, hopefully. So yeah, we've assigned working group to carry out that work, to lead that work, and it's led by Hervé, myself, Esteban, Ricardo, Saul, Mike, and Sander. Other upcoming activities include, the timer doesn't say anything, but okay for time. Other activities include, yeah, as I said earlier, the annual transparency review that'll be performed and published at the end of this year. Yeah, there's an ASO independent review that's occasionally carried out. It needs to be done every now and again, every few years. So it hasn't been carried out since 2017, and as we don't have any board elections to perform next year, this could be a good opportunity, be an opportunity to perform that work. But it's just a heads up; it's not confirmed at all. So if that does get the green light, we'll go ahead with that, and we'll announce it. Along with our other BAU responsibilities, overseeing the global PDP, advising, keeping the ICANN board abreast of internet number resource policy issues, and yeah, appointed 2024 ICANN NAMCOM delegate. Thank you for your time. Any questions? Three, two, one. Thank you.
Good morning also from me. I know you're all excited for my presentation, and I hope you got enough coffee. So from the global policy development, we go a bit closer to us, to the regional policy development. And today, in the next 15 minutes, I'm going to give you an update a bit about what happened in the last months in our region, as policy proposals, what happened in other regions, and also a couple of information about similar topics that were common in multiple regions. So starting from our region, first I show you that after a couple of years of very, how can I say, low participation, 2021, I think it was mostly due to the pandemic. Now we're getting a bit up with the numbers. I'm very happy to say that we have now two policy proposals under discussion in our region. So let's hope that let's say we get all more motivated and we get more energy, more time to be part of discussions. So now at the moment, what we have open is a new policy proposal in this working group, just presented, is in the discussion phase. As you see from the title of the proposal is about making the registration of IPv4 assignments optional, and of course later on is going to be presented more in detail by James, because unfortunately the author of the policy, Jeroen, couldn't be with us, and we greet him and we wish him well. So discussion phase, just to remind you, is like any phase in the PDP, is a moment in which the proposal can be changed, keeping in consideration the feedback received. And this is the second policy proposal we have this year. The first one is already in the review phase, and the discussion phase for the first one is ending on the 4th of November. The second one is in the review phase, so this means that we have already a draft for the policy, and we have already the impact analysis prepared for the RIPE NCC that has been published. This is under discussion in the database working group, and I think the session is tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock, if I'm not wrong, in the main room. So I invite you also to participate, because this is regarding the registration of personal data in the RIPE database with, let's say, a different look at the privacy, and also with, let's say, a suggestion for the RIPE NCC to verify that the new requirements for the registration are respected by everybody. So considering that this is affecting every user of the database, I warmly invite you to participate in the discussion. And also in the review phase, the policy can still be changed in all the phases of the PDP. So it is important to express your opinion. This is the page where you can find the summary of our policy proposals, and again, you can see how the proposal is advancing in the PDP. Again, the consensus is determined by the working group chairs at the end of the review phase. So again, participate, express your opinions, so the working group chairs can have a good idea whether consensus is achieved or not. For who is new to the PDP and doesn't have a lot of experience, I think these are a couple of good basic documents in the sense that are providing the whole process for the PDP in our region. The code of conduct, we heard about it during this meeting. It is important to communicate in a correct way with each other, so please have a look if you didn't do it yet. And link to the working group mailing list. So this is the only one region where discussions are happening in working groups. So subscribe to the working group of your interest, and here you can find all the links. Let's have a look now what happened in the last months in our region. So our colleague implemented some new policies in APNIC, in ARIN, and in LACNIC. Having a look at APNIC, I changed the color because what you see in white is mostly related to documentation. So let's say streamlining or simplifying the text of existing policy manuals. In red, what is affecting a bit the usage of the resources, so new requirements. And in green is what is regarding the management of the resources by the RAR. So you can see that ARIN was mostly busy with reviewing all the policy manual. And probably I start from APNIC. So ASN to customers in APNIC, it means that even if the end user is changing the connectivity provider, it can keep his ASN. Also, when he's becoming a member of APNIC. And this, you can imagine, in our region could be comparable when it's changing sponsoring LAR or something like that. And proposal 144 instead is reserving a pool /21 for experimental allocations for 5 years. So until, because it's been accepted and implemented this year until 2027. The first one in ARIN can be interesting because they're specifying much better, much clearly the requirements to qualify for a public ISN. The other one are really editorial changes. And then in LACNIC, this is actually a specification saying that when a transfer is failing, the offering party doesn't have to return the space to LACNIC. In practice, this was already happening, so it is not a new procedure, but it is much more clearly stated in the policy. Awaiting implementation, we have two proposals about RPKI, ROAS, in AFRINIC and LACNIC. The first one is really the AS0 for unallocated and unassigned AFRINIC address space. And AFRINIC is asking, just at the end of September, asked for experts that want to cooperate, helping with the implementation. So if you're up to it, please do. And in LACNIC instead, also the recipients, so the holders of delegated blocks, so also suballocation and so on, are now able to, should be able, after implementation, to sign ROAS. This is something that in our region is not happening because you need to be the holder of the allocation or of the PI. Then we have a couple of policies that have been accepted but are waiting for ratification for the boards. And this was already in, it's going to happen when the board in AFRINIC is going to be reconstituted, I assume, and the in APNIC, these are mostly editor. They are making a document with all the definitions as one location for all the definition, and the second one was clarifying some conflicting words. I don't read you all the policies because I think I want to get out alive from here. So under discussion, there are really many subjects. So I just made a summary here because, as I said, Arin is very busy cleaning up his documentation. You can see about transfer, ISN, leasing, registration of objects, documentation, and so on. So they have, I think, more than 12 or 14 policy proposals under discussion. Then we have LACNIC that is having a couple of proposals under discussion about these subjects, leasing, PDP, a review also of the documentation and the management of resources. Specifically, I saw that yesterday there was the first consensus declared on the return of resources dedicated to critical infrastructure to the same reserved pool. This was not specified, so this is a policy that is clarifying that. And then we have ARIN that has some policies that you saw before still under discussion, and APNIC at the moment doesn't have, they just, let's say, implemented the last policies. Then going to the similar topics that we saw in different regions, I stole the title from somebody that posted this in Spanish in the LACNIC mailing list. I hope it doesn't, is not getting offended. I really liked it. So we had the same policy proposal presented in 3 regions. And in ARIN and LACNIC is still under discussion, and in APNIC it's possible to present a new version because the first one didn't receive yet consensus. So actually what these proposals are saying is that if there is no direct connectivity, the subassignment or suballocation of addresses is not supposed to be allowed. Of course, there are different opinions, and Marco is gonna tell us more later about the situation also in our how we handle the subject in our region. And another subject is about unused legacy resources. There was not a policy proposal in this on this topic in ARIN, but it was discussed very intensively. So and in APNIC there was a policy proposal. Again, let's see if a new version is going to be presented, to give the RAR the possibility to retrieve legacy resources that are not used. Of course, you know all which can be, not you know all. The discussion is about which are the constraints for the RAR and which can be, what can be done. And of course, not everybody agrees on the idea to retrieve them. In APNIC, I just want to tell you, if somebody is member there or if somebody has resources there, that from January, 1st of January 23, holders of legacy resources must must go under contract, put these resources under contract with APNIC as member or non-member, in order, if they want to keep the registration services open. So after a certain amount of time, these legacy resources are going to be are not going to be present in the WHOIS anymore, and they're also going to be put in IS0 as reserved space. I leave you with useful links. Now I'm going to start reading them all, one letter by letter. No, I'm joking. And the first one is the RAR comparative policy overview, is updated every 3 months. So this is giving the main differences between policies in all RARs. Of course, for details, I suggest you to contact each RAR and have better information. This is just a main guideline. And then you have the policy proposals and the policy manual for each RAR. And with this one, I'm at the end of my presentation. I wonder if you have any questions. No? So thank you very much.
Oh, not so fast, not so fast. We do not have a question from online, but a suggestion from Jordi. Angela, yes, all the APNIC proposals will get a new version soon.
Okay, so I didn't see anything, so thank you, Jordi, for this additional information.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay.
And James again.
Might need the water for this one. Yeah, so the author, unfortunately, as said, cannot be here. So for full transparency, so I'm, as co-chair, going to not be involved in the evaluating of this this policy proposal when it comes to consensus analysis, things like this. So I'm hats off for that. And yeah, I can't speak on behalf of the author as such, but yeah, we've been in contact over the past couple of weeks, of course, and yeah, I've thrown some slides together on what my interpretation of where things are, and yeah, the goal being just to give, you know, a good introduction and open the floor to discussion on the topics. Don't know why I'm behind. So yeah, just to let you know what stage of the policy development process the proposal is actually in at the moment. So it's in phase 2 of 4, the discussion phase. That's a 4-week window where the community discusses the policy proposal. We're now in week 3, so actually I think it's Wednesday next week. It will be the final day for this discussion phase. According to the policy development process, if significant comment, and there has been on this one, the author can create a new version and start a new discussion phase. And if it does get to a stage of general support, the author would draft a ripe document of how it would look in policy, and if in agreement with the evaluating chair or chairs, it will go to the review phase. The ripe entity will perform an impact analysis. So again, my interpretation of the intent of the proposal as such is to allow LAOs to document only information that is needed for operational and administrative purposes in the RIPE database, and that any other information should be optional to register. To not force LAOs to create and maintain duplicate data in the RIPE database, and to reduce administrative overhead for LAOs to manage duplicate data and reduce the RIPE NCC workload through audits and whatnot. So the policy proposal text itself is pretty long. I've included a link at the end. But yeah, in essence, it's the key sentences. The first one, registering sub-assignments, 4.0, registration requirements, registering sub-allocations and assignments in the RIPE database is strongly recommended but not mandatory. So it's a change from must be registered to not mandatory. And yeah, an observation from last week as well. So in the RIPE database, as of 18th of October, contains just over 60,000 top level IP version 4 PA allocations. Of those allocations, 42,000 contained an assignment, as you would expect, about 3 or 2/3. 3.5 thousand contain no assignment or route object. So, you know, maybe they were allocated recently, maybe they're not yet in use. That's you know, that's fine, that's normal. But yeah, interestingly enough, in orange, which occupies almost a quarter of all of the allocations in the RIPE database, contain no assignment but are covered by a route object, which would lead you to interpret that, you know, are they in use? They seem to be in use. So current policy would require those LAOs, those holding LAOs, to register at least 14.7 thousand additional assignments in the RIPE database. Just open facts, you can do with them what you want, really. Community feedback so far, so let's acknowledge those. It's important to see what the community thinks. So assignments are necessary to document who is operating a block of IP addresses, and to document the contact for administrative and technical issues relating to that IP space, such as abuse handling. More feedback was that more information is required to support the argument of actually alleviating administrative burden. LAOs, more feedback. LAOs are obliged to register, or should be obliged to register assignments if visible outside the LAO's network or if used by a customer. Otherwise, assignments registration should be at the LAO's discretion. Another said the proposal does not adequately describe data consistency, data minimization, and data accuracy principles, as it referenced to in the RIPE database requirements task force. And another was to explain to LAOers what the community really expects them to register in the right database in a best common practices document. So obviously the full discussion is available on the mailing list, but there's some just some of the feedback so far. And that's pretty much it. So now at this stage, let's continue the discussion. You know, is there support towards the author's intent? Can the current situation or policy be improved? You know, if so, what would be your suggestions? Yeah, what's your observations? What's your opinions? How are you feeling? Yeah, over to you guys.
Not all at once. We'll start with Sander, and then I have 2 comments on the QA.
Yeah, so thank you for the presentation, Sander Stefan, Six Connect. What I really agreed with the moment you said it, was like, yes, is when you said that everything visible externally should be documented in the right database. I think that is an absolute minimum. However, I think we already have that, because if it's externally visible, there's probably a route object for it, and if there's a route object for it, there has to be an INET num or INET6 num object for it, right?
We're focusing only on IP version 4 right now.
Yeah, no, but just in general, like if there's a route object, there's there must be an INET num object that it points to, right?
No, the allocation is enough.
Okay, so yeah, so I would then definitely put that in as a minimal requirement. And for the rest, yeah, it's a contact database. It's so if something goes wrong, people can see who to contact, who's responsible. If the LAR is knowingly, willingly taking full responsibility to be the single contact point for all its customers, I think that's a business decision. So I think we should at least allow for that. But externally visible must be documented is, I think, the minimum.
So I have 2 remarks from online. One is from Kurt Kaiser. Is the logic correct if routed equals used, if not assigned, is not shown as used? So, you know, this also plays into the question from Sander Stefan. You know, when are we going to say, you know, this outer space is in use? Is that going to be, you know, there's a valid route object, or is it going to be on an assignment? And then we have, oh, this is the.
Yeah, I guess on that point as well, that you maybe the route object was created before being announced, but you know, a quarter of all allocations, you know, it's an interesting number.
Yeah, no, true. Then I have a question from Elvis. I support in general the intent of the proposal. Assignment should be registered only if required by the end user, or only if the LAR wants to delegate some administrative abuse or routing decision to a third party. So that's it.
Hi, Peter.
Hi, James. This is Peter Koch-Dienig. I was a member of the now dissolved task force. That doesn't give me any more wisdom, but fading memory permitting, I might have some different perspective or some additional information. So I'm not going to answer the question about the author's intent because I don't know. I'm missing a couple of things here. The task force report made a subtle or not so subtle distinction between the database and the registry. And I think that difference and the commonalities aren't reflected in the proposal in a way that would help making a decision. Second, while the author points to the database task force report and the recommendations, it is not my perception that the proposal itself reflects the recommendation. That is fine because it doesn't have to, but I want to avoid the impression that this is now a proposal to implement what the database task force recommended. We did make a recommendation to the on the assignments, and following the observation of an asymmetry, and please don't say inconsistency, that means something completely different in a database context. So an asymmetry in depth and volume of usage by various LIRs, and as somebody has said already in the mailing list discussion, maybe a policy proposal isn't the right way to go there. And then a different remark based on the process, maybe in the recent month, the chair team has, with community support and after a long community consultation, issued a, say, clarification to the PDP. And that clarification very strongly suggested that the policy proposal be the result of already in-depth discussion. This proposal seems to come a bit out of the blue and then put things together that might not belong together. So I would urge the chairs to think about their gatekeeping and steering function in this regard. And finally, I don't think this proposal is going anywhere. And unfortunately, the process is biased towards stumbling forward. So I'd suggest putting an end to this and then think about the problems identified in the subsequent discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Peter. The policy proposal itself, or the intent for creating a policy proposal, was discussed during the last white meeting in Berlin. It was not a policy proposal as such at that time. That came later.
Okay, fair enough. But since Berlin, there's only been very little discussion on the list that would support the general direction of the proposal and the problem statement that needs to be fixed. A couple of people have mentioned or their own surprise about the proposal, and also I think 2 or 3 people said that this is not addressing the problem it seems to identify. That's but enough said.
Yeah, I can't speak on behalf of the proposer, but of the author. But yeah, from my view, I believe that he used Berlin to get as much feedback as possible. Again, yeah, that could have been progressed on the mailing list since then before actually making a proposal, but he did interpret or take into account the feedback. And yeah, here we are. And also, yeah, just to confirm as well, I was also on the database requirements task force with Peter, and yeah, our recommendation is, as we say, inspired this proposal, but yeah, definitely is not, directly one for like one-to-one.
So we have an additional question online from Brian Story. To clarify, is the proposal to no longer require the registration of any downstream end user, enterprise, or PA assignments?
It's, yeah, well, we can give our own interpretation, but yeah, we can't speak on behalf. But yeah, the current, the policy text is for any assignments, is for any assignments, should be mandatory, or sorry, should be not mandatory, should be optional. But yeah, from the feedback that Jeroen has received over the past few weeks, and yeah, from my discussions with him, he is taking that into account. So, whether that's specific, the proposed policy text is one that he wants to take forward, but yeah, the intent seems to have changed since then. I don't know if we've got Jeroen online that can actually comment. Okay.
No. We did as chairs also look at all the comments on the mailing list and the feedback that we received. And if this is moving forward, we'll definitely have to have a discussion with Jeroen whether all assignments are not going to be mandatory, or just the assignments for the resource holder for the allocation, which in that case would make probably more sense. That's also what we're feeling in the feedback that we're getting, but that's something that we need to discuss. I have a question from Kurt, also online. Kurt Kaiser, I would like to split the main purpose of the documentation between customer data, mainly assignments, and network operated related data, such as abuse C, admin C. RIPE NCC needs both data sets before, but now the very sensitive GDPR data to purpose may allow a different handling. Yeah, so for the this is not a GDPR topic. Yes, we're trying to minimize duplication of data, you know, and if the assignments are exactly the same in the amount of information as the information from the resource holder, it doesn't make any sense to actually duplicate the exact same information in an assignment as you would see for an allocation. That was at least my reading out of it. But if you're adding different information and assigning to third parties and have different contacts, that kind of stuff, you know, that information should, at least to my knowledge and how I read it, still be in the database. Any comments from you?
No further comment, anyone in the room?
So we'll definitely need to take this back to the mailing list. This is not going to be a done deal or something that's going to be proposed next week or get consensus on.
Yeah, and we've got one more week for the discussion phase for feedback. So, you know, please do contribute if you have any thoughts, to, for, against, even if indifferent. Be great to hear your opinion.
Yes.
Thank you.
So please do voice your opinion also on the mailing list. And now we're up for Marco.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Marco Schmidt. I'm the manager of registration services at the RIPE NCC. And in this feedback, I would like to give you some information about observations that my team saw in the last couple of months. And I want to ask for your feedback on those observations and potential suggestions. I plan to talk about these three topics: the IPv4 waiting list, the IPv4 IXP pool, and the definition of assignment. There were a couple of more topics that have been discussed on the mailing list, for example, about temporary assignments and IPv6, but you saw early on the agenda there will be separate items in the second session of this working group, so I decided to focus on those three topics. First one is the IPv4 waiting list, and probably most of you know that end of last year, the request for IPv4 from new LARs that can get a /24 from the RIPE NCC exceeded the supply that we had. So it means those LARs had to go to the waiting list until some recycled address space becomes available to them. And if you look at this graph, which you also can find on our website, this waiting list keeps on growing. There was a steep increase at the beginning, end of last year, shortly interrupted by a bit of bigger release of recycled address space in January, and since then it kept growing. There was some slowdown during the summer period, but now it seems to be picking up again, and at this moment we have more than 1,050 LARs waiting to get a /24 from the RIPE NCC. As a result, of course, also the time that the LARs have to wait keeps on constantly increasing. So this line, the orange line, shows how many days the number one on the waiting list has been already waiting, and it's now approaching almost 300 days. And information that we are not showing on our website, but I want to share it with you, is actually the amount of allocations we did hand out in the last 11 months. And you see actually it's quite significant. So constantly we deregister the resource. It stays usually in a quarantine time of around 6 months. And then we consider it recycled and to be available to be handed out again. And so far we handed out 934 such allocations since November last year. And to put a bit of perspective, right now we are giving out allocations to LARs that joined the waiting list at the end of January. And also to document a bit more the challenge of demand and supply, it took us 5 months to satisfy requests that have been received within 1 month. So it just keeps on growing. Now, looking forward, at this moment, we have 426/24 allocations in our pool, which looks actually not so bad, but I want to point out that this is related to a one-time effect of deregistration because of non-payment. Every year, we have a couple of members that don't pay their bill, and subsequently the membership is terminated and we take back resources. If I try to show this a little bit in a graphic way, how is our recycled pool composed. So you see more than a half at this moment is coming from non-payment, and a bit more than 200 we have deregistered for other reasons. And 2/3 coming from previous IPv4 allocations and around 1/3 from IPv4 PI assignments, because we have an ongoing project where we validate independent resource holder data, and during this project we do find a couple of abandoned resources where the original resource holder ceased to exist without any legal successor. Now, looking more forward, what to expect. In short, we estimate there will be less and less IPv4 address space to be deregistered. I mentioned this IPv4 PI project, where we validate accuracy. This comes to an end soon. Right now, we deregister an equivalent of 30/24s every month, but this is continue to go down. And if you happen to join now the waiting list, you can estimate that in around 2 years you might get a /24 from us. Quite a long time, right? One reason for this long waiting time is the fact that every new LAR can join the waiting list, and members or organizations can open multiple LAR accounts, and with each of those accounts join the waiting list. We reported on that one earlier a couple of times. So in December last year, so when the waiting list just started kicking up, it was even 3/4 that actually were on the waiting list, but not really newcomers, but rather an organization that has already several accounts and eventually is on the waiting list or got address space before. Right now, in percentage, it has changed a bit. So around 2/3 are now real newcomers, how I used to call them, one organization, one LAR, and 1/3 multiple LAR accounts. However, if you look in total numbers, it has not really changed much, because looking at the 10+ LARs, we are right now at 12%, which is 12% of 1,000 is around the same number like 50% of 300. So it is still significant, and it does result in a delay for real newcomers, because every multiple LAR account that is waiting on the waiting list means an additional 1 to 2 days more waiting for normal LARs, so to call. We have presented on this earlier. There was a wider sense, oh, this is not in the intent of the policy, because this /24s are for new LARs only. However, not much happened on that one. And I think I have an idea why. And for this, actually, I want to ask here in the room for a show of hands, who here in the room right now is at the waiting list and waiting to get a /24? One person. I think we have a proposal there, because I think the problem that I see here, the people on the waiting list are newcomers. They are new to the IR system. They don't know much probably about the right community. We see at least one person is here. They don't know much about the PDP. So This problem is with people that are not familiar with the PDP. So I just want to, again, pose the question here to the room. Do you want to accept the current situation to say, well, tough luck, IPv6 is the future and IPv4 is history, or does somebody want to propose a change? Moving on to the next topic, it's about the IPv4 IXP pool, and that's actually a nice success story because in 2019, we reported to the RIPE community that the original IXP pool, which is a /16, there's a dedicated pool for this critical infrastructure with the size of /16, will be depleted in 2022. The working group took action. There was a policy proposal discussed and consensus was reached and implemented to add another /16 to the pool for IXPs. And then here you can see how basically the pool has developed since. So this beautiful jump in 2019, you can see was due to this policy change. And it was really good because if you forecast what would happen without the /16, quite punctual to this RIPE meeting, we would have to announce that there's no IPv4 resources left for IXPs. So it was a success story, I would say. And the vast amount of IXPs currently hold the /24 assignments. There are a handful, 12 that get a /23 and one /22. And we do estimate at this moment that the pool will last until 2029. We do see a slight increase in requests over the last few years, which is also related to the uptake of virtual IXPs. And overall, this is fine. We have 7 years, but we still thought it is good to bring this to your attention and just to have a consideration, is this current estimated lifetime acceptable? And if you would think, okay, no, actually this should be available for a longer time, is there the need for a policy change to somehow extend the lifetime? And that brings me to the, would you like, yeah.
Yeah. Da, 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 da. Okay, good. I have a question about the IXP policy. So the IXP policy was originally created so that IXPs wouldn't have to go to an LIR. But so we're basically out of space. So why don't they just buy space like everyone else? Why is there a special IXP policy anymore?
Well, I think that is maybe something for the working group, but I think it was always considered as a critical infrastructure that there should be something available, not
yeah, everyone's infrastructure is critical to them, but okay.
Do you want to take questions now, or should I save them for later?
Maybe let me just talk about the last point, and then I'm happy to get some feedback. And I will hurry up because I know I'm between you and the coffee break. So the last topic that I want to discuss is something that Angela already informed you about. We have right now in 3 other regions discussions about leasing, and that is not that this is not allowed or should be not allowed. And this is based on the proposer's understanding that an LAR making an assignment is only really an assignment if this is related to a direct connectivity service. And if this is not the case, it would be leasing. However, on the other side, it is our RIPE indices long-term understanding that we don't have any definition of leasing. So whatever service relation is there between an LAR and the end user, this qualifies to make an assignment. And this has actually worked pretty well over the last 20+ years. However, because of those discussions in the other regions, I thought, okay, let's have a look at the policies. What does our policy say? And that's the IPv6 policy and the IPv4. And the IPv6 policy on that topic actually is short and sweet. Basically say, yeah, end user get an assignment from an ISP or an LAR. The IPv4 policy, on the other hand, is a little bit ambiguous if you really look down to the letters. And I marked the interesting parts here in bold. So we have one sentence that says that an LAR assigns to downstream networks, so which could be seen as, oh, indeed, there must be a connectivity. However, already in the next sentence, there's a new term added, the end user. So it can be a downstream network or an end user. And just only to later say, that LARs are assigned to end users and with services provided by the issuing LAR, but not really a definition what kind of services are referred to that one. And basically the questions that I want to pose here to the room is, do you think that these services that an LAR is providing needs a further definition, further clarification? Does the RIPE Address Policy Working Group actually still support the RIPE NDC's long-term understanding let's just be flexible there? And either way, should be there some clarification made to the IPv4 policy? And that's the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to take questions and feedback.
Hi, Sander Stefan, 6Connect, but also ex-working group chair. So let's start with the V4 policy that you talked about. I've been involved since the whole beginning of the soft landing, run out, whatever people want to call it, policies. And I must say that the fact that we still have some V4 to hand out, even if the waiting time is 2 years, is pretty amazing to me. I think our intent was not that ambitious, so I think the policies have worked really well. I'm really getting to the point where I'm like, okay, you know, we extended the lifetime of V4 for so many years, and we gave people so many opportunities that at some point the deck chairs have been properly rearranged. So I'm not saying we should not do anything there, but I don't have a very strong feeling that we should either. To go from there to the IXP pool, I do think IXPs have an important role. So I'm still in favor of having a separate pool for that. Would it help? Would it be possible to change the policy to in such a way that the RIPE NCC, we just tell the RIPE NCC, like, keep the pool at this minimum level, and if it goes below that, use some of the returned resources to fill up the IXP pool. Because then we don't need to have discussions about adding stuff to the IXP pool. We just set a minimum level and just allow the NCC to do what it needs to do, because I don't think we need to micromanage that, and we can give the NCC some freedom here.
It would mean a policy change, because
oh,
right now the rule is...
No, it definitely would mean a policy change, but I was like, let's do a policy change that explicitly just allows the NCC to solve this without needing our intervention every time.
I'd like to make a short comment here.
Am I being volunteered?
Well, obviously. But every discussion that we want to make on the IXP pool, we need to connect with the Connect people.
Yep.
Because the majority of them are not here, and the majority of the people that are involved in that specific receiving end of that policy are in the Connect working group. So we need to volunteer, get their information. How do they see this moving up for a 7-year period? Or is the consensus there, you know, it is enough?
When is their session? Do you know?
Not out of mind. Probably today. Yeah.
Right before lunch. Okay.
So,
I will go there and say the same thing there.
Yes. So please refer to the slide there, and at least have the discussion with the working group there, also on the mailing list, so that we can, you know, get their input, and then we can decide whether we need to make a change in there. All right. Last comment from you, because we have our waivers as well.
Yeah. What was the last slide?
The definition of assignments.
The definition of assignments. Yeah. I vaguely remember a long time ago, this was discussed at some point, and I think it was intentional at the time to leave it a bit vague, because there are so many different ways of providing a service to a customer. Like you have MPLS networks. These times you have SRv6. Well, that's v6, but you get the point. So there's so many different ways of providing a service. And back in the day, I kind of remember we intentionally didn't go into what that service then would be, because then we would always be chasing reality. We did put in that there has to be some service relation. So I think the NCC, according to the current wording, could be a little bit stricter. But yeah, I think if we want to tell the NCC to be a bit stricter, we're going to have a really long policy development process in defining what that means. So yeah.
It depends. Currently, at least there's an invoicing service.
Oh, okay, that seems to qualify.
So just before we go forward, I just want to acknowledge that we're 4 minutes into the coffee break. Sorry. No, it's great to have the discussion, of course, but we could either, go for 5 more minutes or have the break. So 5 more minutes. Quick, yeah, from Elvis. So it's a comment more than a question. Let's not get into the leasing discussion, since forever LARs in the right region have assigned either PA, PI to connecting customers, or to customers they offer all kinds of services, and the colors of the IPs have not really mattered.
Dennis, we're going to keep it short. You got 1 minute, and the person after you has 1 minute as well.
Dennis Walker, co-chair of the database working group. I have a comment on leasing. First of all, I have no view on whether it should be allowed or not. That's not my interest. But what we have now is a situation where somebody with spare address space is asking third-party companies to lease it out on their behalf, which may go to an LAR who sees it more as an allocation and then assigns it to some end user. None of this can be reflected in the right database, because you have a whole structure here that we simply is hidden out of view. So if we're going to allow it, that's fine, but then we should document it properly. Thank you.
Good comment. Thank you, Dennis.
An accurate database, a good database.
Ricardo Gori, IP4Wish. I wanted to comment about the LAR definition. I interpreted it as a local internet registry, like RR is a regional internet registry. So basically, going deeper in this definition, I don't find a strict relation between LAR and the service who is operated. Very often the resources are associated to access offered by an operator to an internet service provider or in a data center. So I don't see the needing of going deeper in the definition of an LAR, because should reflect the fact that, as the comment before said, give the right description on the database where the resources are in use and who is using the resource. So if this is consistent and correct, in my opinion, is done.
Thank you for your comment. Sander, last 5 seconds.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I actually promised Erik that I would bring this up during AOB, which we don't have. Well, yeah, but I'll be in a different room then.
I'll take it.
So, but yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, then thank you very much. I got what I need, and yeah, now it's time for the coffee, I would say.
Time for coffee.
Thank you. Sorry.
Welcome back, everybody, after a well-needed coffee break. Thanks to see we didn't lose everybody here. We're still trying to get the slides from Leo on the system. Do we have Leo on site, Short? Yes, I know. Ah, there's Leo.
Hello.
Leo, we're trying frantically to get your slides into the system. Do you have them there as well for remote sharing, right?
I do have the slides here, and I can share them remotely if that's okay.
Yeah, let's see if that works.
Okay, so remind me, not preloaded, share screen, share screen.
Good to see you, Leo.
Can you see? Can you see my screen?
No.
Okay,
Not yet.
well, let's try. I do want to share my screen. And let's try again. Can you see that?
I don't see it yet.
Okay. Maybe just to avoid people having a bad experience, I will go and talk, and we will make the slides available later. They are mostly pretty pictures. I don't think the slides are essential. What's essential is what's being said. Does that work for everyone so that we don't waste people's time?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
Let's get started.
So at RIPE 83, we essentially kicked off a bit of an IPv6 policy review, noting that it was roughly 20 years since the IPv6 policy had been created. Obviously, there have been small changes, but the substantial body of the policy is roughly the same as it was when we moved from the bootstrap policy, which is what we used when IPv6 was launched, like at the turn of the century, to sort of the globally coordinated policy we ended up with around 2003. So apparently my slides are now in Meet Echo, so that's nice. So let's manage slides. No. Select them from preloaded slides. Share preloaded slides. Share. Okay, so here we are. So at the last meeting, we got a report from Gert Düring, Kurt Kaiser, Sander, Stefan, and they had taken a look at where we were with the IPv6 policy, and they came back with what I thought was really quite a positive report, basically saying that it should be a little bit easier to get, and all of the stuff that we started out with at the beginning was positive. And of course, that was reinforced earlier this week with the IPv6 panel, when we saw some of those rollout statistics and people talking about networks going IPv6 by default, things like that. So we did have a few rough spots, some areas where we need to sand down the IPv6 policy perhaps, and the kinds of things that they talked about were the kinds of things that you would expect if the IPv6 policy had been developed by network engineers and software developers. Hard boundaries, definitions that were either yes or no, and I think this is a recognition perhaps that we live in a world where there aren't always these very clean definitions. Sometimes things get a little bit smudged, and so we probably do need to do some work on the IPv6 policy, especially because we need to make sure that those people who don't have access to IPv6 now do get IPv6 to it in the future. One of the important things that is going to go elsewhere is an update to the route aggregation recommendations. I can't remember if that's going into the routing working group or BCOP. The point I'm making here is that it's not going in address policy because it's routing rather than address policy. In order to make things easier, to sand off those edges, some of the things we need to do are to take account of ripe NCC feedback. The documentation that we give to users through the ripe NCC could do with some improvement. Some of the issues that were raised in that report that we saw at the last RIPE meeting essentially talk about PI policy and interpretation. If you've got just a couple of addresses used by another network, can you still get PI? And of course, justifying a /47, there is this very hard barrier at the moment. Anything up to a /48, no questions asked. /47, that's a little bit tricky. So this is the feedback we've got from the RIPE NCC. At this point, we need to go back to some of those goals that are listed in the IPv6 policy. So administrative ease and the uniqueness of addresses. Are they all the same as they were 20 years ago, or has the priority order changed? If the priority order has not changed, are there new goals, and where should those be added? Because we are now the system that everyone uses to get a job, to pay their bills, all of those different things. That means that maybe something that we didn't think about in 2002 when we were essentially developing the framework that is the current policy is really important now because we've moved on by 20 years. So we don't have a specific policy to discuss right now, but we do need to make sure that if we do come up with a policy proposal for a change, we understand what that policy proposal is, and there is a consensus that there is a real and well-defined problem that we can go and put into a policy proposal. So I would like to step away and listen to people in the room, and I'd also like to say that, while we're going to have this discussion in the room, we're also very happy to run a couple of intersessional webinars, or whatever the word of the day is, between now and the spring, so that people who want to have an actual conversation can have an actual conversation, and we can work towards that clearer definition so that we can perhaps come back with something a little bit more concrete in the future. So here we are thinking about relative priorities. And now I'd like to hand over to Erik to look at people in the room and essentially coordinate this discussion so that we can work out where we want to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo, for this short recap of what we already did since Berlin. So since the last RIPE meeting, RIPE 84, there was a lot of updates on this topic. That does not mean that the issues that were raised are gone. I've also had a discussion with a Dutch ISP that had quite some issues because they actually plan to do V6 with /48 to their customers, and instead of that, had to refer back to /56 because they couldn't get the documentation at a certain pace, and they needed to move forward. So instead of requesting a 25, I think, or a 27, they had to go with a 29. So the amount of documentation that is needed once you have a 29 but need more space is substantial. And there should be some guidance in the policy, or how are we going to approach that? Because it should not be impossible for larger networks, even though they're still rolling out fiber, to document that and be able to get the request once they that they put in. We have somebody on the mic, Sander.
Hey, turns out I don't need to be in a different room at this point. So hello again. Sander Stefan. Yeah, I was part of the group that discussed all these V6 policy changes, and yeah, the main thing in this case was like the steep jump in requirements. Like we felt it's like this is completely no documentation at all. This is go write a full size novel. So that slope we thought should be more gradual. One of the things, and this is actually a question for the NCC, because I remember back in the day when you got a /32, the NCC would always keep 3 bits reserved for future growth. That's why we changed the policy to a /29 and not a /28, because there were only 3 bits that were guaranteed to be available. Is that still the case? Is it still 3 bits? Okay, because that does mean that organizations that need to grow, because I had some organizations that were worried that, like, yeah, we request something now, but then in the future we have to request more and we get all these deaggregated blocks. That at least that is kind of a mitigation, because you know that if you go back later, at least you will grow your current block for a few bits. So at least that that helps them a bit, because I had one organization in the Netherlands. Don't know if Rins is in the room, but he was worried about this. He's like, yeah, we have this plan for future growth, but we can't justify it right now, and I don't want to end up with a massive address space. So in their case, this probably they probably don't need to worry so much, because they can grow. But again, this is not something that's in the policy. This is an implementation detail. So maybe to alleviate some of this, oh God, I can't justify everything right now stress, is to actually make that a bit more official and tell people, like, maybe you can't document it now, but we have a reservation for you if you come back in the future. So maybe it would help just to make this implementation detail a bit more formal, but I don't know how the NCC feels about that, because I don't want to micromanage them either.
So we can go from a 29 to a 28 to a 27? So
yeah,
what's the gaps?
26 even.
26. Okay. That would be, I think if we take a gradual approach, even if you grow into it, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, but now we don't guarantee people that they get this, and people who used to get a /32 could only go to a /29, because when they got this 32, the 3 bits are up to 29.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones who initially got a 29 will be able to go to a 26. So we do have the risk that the older allocations can't grow and the newer ones can,
mm-hmm.
depending on what the initial size was. So we have to see how that affects our the LIRs, because I don't want to force people, like, so maybe some LIRs request only a 32 because they're like, I don't need the /29, but don't realize that if they request a /32, they might not be able to grow to a 26 later. Mm-hmm. They also limit their future growth.
Yeah, no, I
thought, Sander,
for me as well, I thought that the 29 was the actual, the growth path from 32 to a 29. But it didn't know that for the new 29s that there were 3 bits as well. Okay.
Sander, can I ask you a question?
Sorry, Leo.
My question to you is, when you're talking about reservations and growth potential, what sort of planning horizon do you think looks reasonable from the perspective of the network operator? And I'd love the RIPE NCC to chip in as well from their perspective, because they need to go back to the IANA if they have to get more address space. So what sort of planning horizons should we be looking at? And that can help us in this discussion.
So yeah, so currently there is no official planning horizon, and the implementation detail is that there is a planning horizon of 3 bits, so somebody can grow up to 8 times as large. I'm just I don't want to micromanage the NCC here. I want to give them some leeway in how they manage the address space. But if we can let the people know, but like maybe we need to put this in policy. Maybe we just need to inform people better about what the current operational procedure of the RIPE NCC is. I don't know what where the solution lies yet.
There could be that a LAR gets some form of first right of refusal, so that they can actually make it notice to the NCC we are intending to grow in the next 3 to 5 years, so that the additional bits are not being consumed. So that might be an option, which is actually quite low weight or lightweight to do it that way.
You mean more like not a guaranteed something, but just an informational hint to the NCC. Like nothing is guaranteed, but we'll take it into account.
Yeah, they still need to do the documentation part.
Well, my personal preference would just be to round allocation sizes to nibble boundaries, but
yeah, well, we can't always, especially if we if we're running out, then we also have to go back to IANA and say I need additional V6, and the question is why you only did 20,000 allocations.
Yeah, because we gave everybody 16 bits extra.
Yeah. So
just before on that point, one of the things in the global policy, if I remember correctly, and I did used to have to implement it, was that reservations are considered use, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't manage things responsibly.
Exactly. Marco.
Yeah, Marco Schmidt, RIPE NCC, and just to also have it properly minuted, want to confirm that right now, indeed, for every allocation that we hand out IPv6, we reserve an additional 3 bits. So somebody with /29 has a reservation up to /26, somebody with /26 until /23, and so on. There are a few exceptions, like for example, historic allocations that were /32 that got extended to /29. It cannot be go further. And sometimes IPv6 allocations are being split and half transferred, and of course this is also lost. But that's just as a side note. The 3 bits are there since a quite long time, so this allocation algorithm worked quite well. It's an operational decision, and indeed we could make this more clear that it is out there, that people are aware. We do this on a case basis when we, for example, sometimes receive large allocation requests and we think, that's a bit ambitious. Then we usually tell them, you know what, start with your /29 and you can go later. But maybe we can make it on a more general outreach basis. And just quickly to respond to Leo about IANA, going back to IANA, I'm less concerned about that. So still the /12s that we get, they last quite long, even with this allocation algorithm. So I wouldn't worry too much about that part.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Tina Morris, AWS. Same thing, nibble boundaries. Why not? We're using like 3% total globally of what's been assigned. And it's ridiculous to get these micro allocations. And when you assign just a part of a block, that's the entire network planning is messed up. Internally, you can no longer use nibble boundaries. You can no longer make a good organizational plan for your network, which is the whole point of V6, to make it better, easier, implementable. And if we don't do that for organizations, we're actually blocking growth into V6, which is so important.
No, true. Thanks. How we're doing online, James? Any questions online?
No questions, there's a couple of comments. Elvis, as we confirm the 3 bits are actually reserved even for larger blocks. He doesn't understand then why we're having a discussion. And Elvis is asking to send audio. Let me see.
So Elvis is requesting the queue.
Elvis?
Hi, morning everyone. So yeah, I just want to say that I wanted to say that the NCC uses the sparse allocation methodology to make allocations out of its /12 that it receives from the IANA, which allows any allocation that it makes on top of the 3 bits that are by default reserves to grow to as much as possible, just because of how the sparse allocation mechanism is implemented by the NCC.
It's quite hard to understand what you're just saying.
Elvis, maybe
Elvis.
your line is very unclear. If you can summarize that quickly again.
So I was the right NCC uses the sparse allocation mechanism to make IPv6 allocation.
Yeah, please type in the Q&A and
Okay.
I can read it out. I think it's a bit easier. Kurt says, I would turn it around and define a nibble boundary routing obligation to support small V6 routing tables. I hate fragmentation and deaggregation.
Yeah, so that comes back to the goals of the policy. Obviously, you know, as we still think that deaggregation is not something that we can fix in policy. We do encourage everybody to use, you know, best common practices in that, and not start announcing all their 48s. But you know, if you look at the current V6 routing table, it's 48% is 48s at this point. Sander.
I might really regret this. Like Tina said, and I said it before, nibble boundaries. I would really like that. Would there be interest in me writing a draft policy proposal to realign the policies with that? That would mean changing /29 into a /28 to align it, ask the NCC to reserve 4 bits to align it with a /24, stuff like that, and actually redo the policy that we only do allocations on nibble boundaries, or is that going too far? Do we want something more fine-grained? Like show of hands, who would like to actually align the policy with nibble boundaries? I only see a couple of hands, so not completely sure yet. So I'll discuss it with the chairs to see if there's support for this.
Oh,
but
I definitely support the fact that you're writing it. Definitely.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not sure if I'm not going to regret this. But maybe it's time to be a bit more ambitious than tweaking it 1 bit at a time and just doing a bit
Totally
bigger
agree,
overhaul.
Totally agree. Okay. Yes, and also during the next video call that we're going to have on V6, we would like to invite you and Gert and Kurt, obviously, to provide the additional feedback on that. We will also invite people from RS to tell us exactly what their current operations is, where they stumble upon in the current policy, and how we can, you know, invite them to provide their information before we make any policy changes going forward into Right 86 in Rotterdam. And we have the chair.
So there's one
The right
question
chair
online.
on the
Sorry,
mic.
there's one question online that was been there for a couple of minutes. So Daniel Karenberg, Internet Geek, asks, why is maintaining a very low number of prefixes suddenly such a big problem. We manage a much bigger number in IP version 4.
You mean the fact that the V6 prefixes are a bit longer? And if you have the, if you start announcing every 29 in 48 /48s, you get an explosion in the routing table. So that's why aggregation is a topic.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
You're welcome, Raymond. All right, Miriam.
Miriam Kühne, right chair. I think you already just said what I wanted to respond to Sander, because Sander immediately jumped, and I'm happy to see this enthusiasm jumped into, like, shall I propose a policy proposal? And I was going to suggest maybe discussing it first on the list, just like was discussed in the previous session, so that you have some more time to discuss it before it enters the formal policy. But I think you just suggested to do that during the interim sessions that you're going to organize.
Yes.
That's all.
Thank you for the feedback and maintaining, that we follow the PDP proposal, the PDP process. All right.
We do just have an extra +1 for the nibble boundaries from Radu Adrian Verendu. Sorry for butchering your name. From Radu.
Okay. Leo, any other topic on this? Or are we done on V6 for now?
Sorry about that. I had myself muted. I think we've had a really useful discussion. The one thing I'd like to say is, before leaping towards proposing a specific thing of nibble boundaries, it would be really good to root it in the policy goals and either positively reaffirm the goals, or to go and say, no, we need to adjust the goals in this way. And then we will have clarity and alignment within the community on what the policy proposal needs to be. And that should hopefully make the discussion over the policy a little bit simpler, because we've already worked out together what we want to achieve.
Excellent. Excellent feedback. And thanks for your structured approach on this. And you're totally right. We'll take it from there and have the discussion further on the mailing list. And then we'll go to the next topic on the agenda. Which is going to be temporary IP4 assignments, the minimum assignment size. Oh, are we going back to Leo then? Yes, we are. No, there's no slides. Yes. So this was a topic that we discussed in Berlin as well, the temp assignment size. There is a temporary pool where researchers can request V4 space for research, events, stuff like that. And Leo is going to do a quick chat on that and see if we can get some feedback from the room after that. Can't we just give him the camera? Ah, there he is. Ah, welcome back, Leo. Long time.
Hello again. Okay, so we're talking about temporary IPv6, sorry, temporary IPv4 assignments and the minimum assignment size. And this is a really simple question. The question is that the RIPE NCC gets requests for academic and research experiments, which often only need a very small number of IPv4 addresses in order to conduct the experiment. The policy that they have says that you justify IPv4 addresses for experiments in basically the same way that you justify IPv4 addresses for anything else. So if you don't need 128 or more, you can't get a /24. So do we need a minimum size for temporary IPv4 assignments? And if so, should that apply only to academic and research assignments, or does it need to be a more general thing? Because if you need an assignment and you need to use it, then at the moment you need a /24. So as I'm not in the room, I'm not going to point out people in the room and say, oh yes, you can speak, but that is essentially the question there. But that is the problem that we face, and it would be great to hear what people have to say on that.
We do have a comment online from Elvis. Minimum /24 should be allocated for temporary assignments, unusable otherwise.
I tend to agree on that as well. I see a raised hand in the room. Any other thoughts? Do we need to minimize this to research, or is it more general use? My personal feeling would be not specific research, but because, you know, for the V4 assignment policy, there is the minimum allocation and assignment for /24 anyway. So I think this should align there as well. And then the next question is, we're going to take this back to the mailing list. And if there is some additional comment there, and we have somebody on the mic, please state your name and affiliation.
Hello, my name is Edwin Verheul. I work at SURF. Actually, we're really happy WIPE-NC provides temporary assignments. We use it for events. We're really happy with that. But one practical thing we encounter is the geo IP. It's not governed by any authority. It's like scattered. There should be maybe some authority on that, but that's out of scope for this meeting. But a short-term solution for this could be that we actually keep /24s or small assignments, reserve them inside for use for specific countries. So the GeoIP databases will keep the same, and we don't encounter issues like, for example, services that limit their services for specific countries.
Yeah, so geolocation is going to be an issue with whether you talk about leasing or if you talk about temp assignments. There might be an option there where the NCC can provide a geo feed. There is some options to feed those specifically for the temp assignments into all the IP databases that are doing geolocation. That is definitely an option. Otherwise, you'll need to extend the time that you actually have the space in use, because you know it typically takes about 6 to 8 weeks before most databases are actually updated with a geolocation. You can speed that up if you do that yourself and you're willing to do the legwork. But you know that is how it is. So definitely good input on that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Question on. Sorry, Marco, you're going to.
Marco, go ahead.
Okay, Marco Schmidt, WIPE-NC. I just want to say that we as WIPE-NC, we are really happy to see that actually there's a general support for the idea to make a minimum assignment size, and it's also good to bring it back to the mailing list. And we really would appreciate if then basically somebody takes the lead and make a proposal. And we have Angela, the policy officer, in the room, and she also can help online to help with all the formalities, because we brought it up. It is for us like really like a pain point. Everybody says, yeah, that should be changed. And we always we get reasonable requests and we say, yeah, how can we make it work? So yeah, just first at this moment, thank you for the general sense that it should be changed, and yeah, we are happy to help with any actual policy proposal.
Yeah, so for us as chairs, it also helps if there is somebody who is actually using it, might actually help in the policy proposal, Edwin. So I'll have a discussion with you on that and see if we can pinpoint a volunteer with you.
We have a very good question, I think from Kurt Kaiser. He asks, is there the same usability guaranteed after getting it back? For example, that is spam lists, blacklists, etc. I've seen pretty unusable space come back, which is a lot of work. So maybe it's a question towards the NCC about due diligence to ensure that the space is cleaned up correctly before being reissued.
Marco Schmidt again. No, at this moment, we don't really have like a perfect cleanup. We do pick address space randomly, and we allow a certain quarantine time, but we don't really, let's say, look how tainted the address space is coming back. So at this moment, it's, we try to give an as clean as possible one, and maybe I can contact Kurt if he had some negative experience to find out what went wrong here.
Okay, thank you.
Elvis online has put his hand up. I'll pick up the minimum assignment, the temporary assignment policy proposals. And we also have an extra comment from Radu for France Internet Exchange. How about we start to phase out the temporary allocation stuff and start to gradually reduce the temporary pool towards zero? The message should be V4 is over, do your stuff over IP version 6, no?
Thanks for the comments. Anybody else in the room? Okay, then there is the open mic AOB, hinting Sander.
You think I almost ran this working?
Well, you have some experience in this.
Only 11 and a half years. Yeah, Gerrit still won. I miss him, by the way. I'm sad he's not on site. Gerrit, if you're online, we miss you. Anyway, there was a message on one of the RIPE mailing lists about Ukraine by Hans-Peter Holen, the CEO of the RIPE NCC. And this was about protecting the Ukrainians, because sometimes with the invasion, they are being forced to transfer their addresses to companies that are friendly with the invaders, sometimes at gunpoint, or their family is at gunpoint. So we already talked about this in Berlin, but it's still going on. There's still no solution there. And one of the things I noticed was that Hans-Peter, in his reply to the Ukrainians, said, take this up in address policy. My personal feeling was that protecting its members' resources is not a policy. That's something that the NCC should do anyway. But Hans-Peter said that he thought he needed a policy from this working group to be able to do anything. My personal feeling is that he doesn't, but how does the rest of the working group feel about this?
Yeah, so before we actually go to the room, and I see Hans-Peter standing up as well, we as chairs have discussed this also during the chair meeting last week. And if you look at this from a point of war, this is not unique to Ukraine. So whatever comes into play here needs to also apply for other war zones that we already have in the RIPE region. So it should also apply to Syria. It should also apply to Palestine. So there are different countries that have issues with this, and it should basically be conform for everybody. There has been suggestions where people get an option in the LAR portal to shoot themselves in the foot if they want to, and basically lock transfers in their LAR or lock them as their resources. That has some options to discuss. Doing a country-specific transfer lock is not something that I would envision. But if you look at this from a point where you look at art, and art is stolen during war, what typically happens is the previous owner or the heirs, they go to a court case, they report it as an act of war, and actually get something from a court case in a designated country, and that, in my opinion, should be the way to go here. And we should actually have a look at the appeal process and not at policy. And having said that, I'll be more than willing to, if you can leave the mic for Hans Petter and have him answer to the room.
Shall we hear from this gentleman first, and then we'll give it to Hans?
Maxim Tuliev, represent Ukrainian local internet registry. So I totally agree that it's not a policy proposal. It's not to be done via the policy change. I agree that it's a good idea to have a Belgrade button. So if you push it, the transfer will be locked for some period of time, for example, half of a year. I think it's the best. I think country-specific lock is not an option at all. Also, I should point to you that now in Ukraine we have a very bad situation inside. We have some corrupted government people that thinks to let something like government agreement for transfer, for bribe, of course. So I think that should not be done. So no country specific for me, no policy change, just Belgrade button will do the work. Thank you.
Yeah. So one of the risks that we see if people start locking their own transfers, and I hate to make this visual here. If a director of a company at gunpoint or his family at gunpoint is being threatened, I think the best thing to do is sign the freaking document and get the documents, get the transfer done, and actually take an appeal, because that is the safest option for everybody involved. As soon as guns are there, this is, get it out of the way. Locking transfers and making sure that within the system and the policies that we think we have, that somebody with a gun will say, either you sign this or you remove the lock and things like that, it will only put the family in harm's way. So the safest option is to do the transfer and then go to a court and actually do an appeal in court. However, that's my opinion.
The problem is, at first, we have some statistics like situation that already done on occupied territory, not with IP addresses, but with other assets. I personally don't know any case of this hijack of IP addresses. So maybe somebody knows. But for physical object, we know that people actually was killed after the transfer. So they take their car and kill after that. So it will not help just to make a transfer. But we will open a big can of worm. It means reversed transfers. I think there should be no reversed transfers at all.
Okay.
Because some bad actor can do the transfer and after that go to the court and get the paper that there was some maybe force majeure or something like this, and reverse transfer knowingly know that that's the whole. So they want to do the reverse transfer before the transfer. So it's like some.
Yeah, like I said, the process in here is quite similar on art, for instance. So how that looks into in reality, that's what we need to see. I would like to give the mic to Hans Petter first, Sander.
Okay.
I just wanted to mention, it sounds like we're doing NCC services here because this is not about policy. So
No, it is. Yes. So in the whole process, there is going to be a topic this afternoon by Athena with a couple slides in NCC services. But
hello, my name is Elena Kushnir. I'm the director and co-founder of WebPro company. We are the telecommunication company, internet provider of critical infrastructure and business in Ukraine. We continue working in Ukraine. And of course, we have leaders who only sell and buy IP addresses. And we have leaders who use it every day and give services. And of course, in when the war started in Ukraine, business who continue work in Ukraine, we're afraid that somebody with guns stay our near head. And in this case, of course, we don't think about some IP address. Of course, we do everything to save family, to save our lives. And staying here and continue working in Ukraine, not abroad living in Ukraine, and stay and continue working. Of course, we're afraid for our business and afraid to our resources, because it is, first of all, cybersecurity. This is not small money, which we can save, because our infrastructure destroyed every day. And we don't think about our future. We don't think about how to receive money from selling IP addresses. We think how to survive in this time. That's why today in our Ukrainian community chat, we have, for example, discussion from not from occupied territories, Nikolai Kucheruk, and he stay in the territory today not occupied, but in the documents it is a part of Ukraine, of Russia, and he afraid, and he today ask Max, could you tell me how, for example, government can store my IP addresses? It is not possible, because we have a right policy. We agree this policy, and we don't want that some government organization or deputies have influence for this policy. It is our position, and we agree with policy of RIPE. It is very important. And in all countries, corruption is present, even in European Union. And we fight with this, of course, and we don't want to have some influence from government. Because business, it's a business, private is a private, and government, it is a government. We have very good dialogues with our government, with different committees. We have business have influence to our government because we have a lot of work groups. And we discuss all laws which they want to improve. And in this case, I must mention, Max told that he don't know any stories about stolen IP addresses. As I want to mention situation with FTCOM. FTCOM had a lot of IP addresses which today stolen and registered in Russian territory. It is a real history. And now we can discuss changes in policy, everything. And I want just now say thank you very much, RIPE and NNC, for dialogue, because for us it is very important that you can hear us and that possibility that I can stay here. Because we think that Ukrainian community is that community that stay and continue working in Ukraine. It is more important that only have some IP addresses and have business in this. That's why of course, we want to discuss, and we want to frozen all these transfers to that period when we find some way how can you protect us, because we are the part of your family. We stay here and ask, maybe you have some ways how can you protect us. Please protect us because we are your family. Thank you very much.
Hans-Petter Holing, Managing Director of the RIPE NCC. So first I want to say thank you for my Ukrainian friends for actually coming here and sharing your thoughts on this. My heart is with you, and what is happening is really terrible. So let's that be clear. The RIPE NCC operates under a transfer policy. My colleague Athena, our Chief Legal Officer, will present in the Service Working Group an analysis of the different solutions that has been proposed so far. She has published a Labs article on that, and which of them the legal analysis tells us that we might need a policy change for or not. Now, of course, we're more than willing to discuss this with the community and hear input, and especially we need input on how to do this. And we're listening very carefully to everything that's being said in this working group and the next working group. And then we will have to review this afterwards and see what next steps we can take. And I assure you that no matter how we're going to do forward on this, the board is also very supporting in taking action in a timely manner so that we don't let this drag out. So if it needs a policy proposal, we may suggest to the executive board that they could do temporary freeze in the meantime. So don't let the policy process path be prohibitive because of the timing. So just want to say that there will be a detailed analysis in the next working group, and then let's look at it from that.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Hello, my name is Artem Zubkov, and I'm like a provider and guy from occupied territories in Ukraine. And I have like a short remark. I think it will be good for just like physical security to make some kind of log for transfers and make it like to know everyone that it's physically like impossible and legally impossible. So guy with a weapon should know that it's impossible, and it's like no reason for him to threat somebody if he knows that it's like impossible. So you can stop something if it's physically can be done. So I think for security reason for people it will be a good idea just to log everything. But maybe like Mark said, it should be if person want to lock it, he can choose to lock it like for some time, for a year or for 2 years, and it will be like undone can't be undone in any like very keys. I think that would be like good idea.
Okay. We'll take this back also after the discussion with services. There's definitely some legal implication at that point, but we'll take the discussion back to the working group as well.
One question online in the Q&A from Elvis. Hi, Hans-Petter. I do not see how policy can help here. Can you please guide us on what kind of policy would their NCC need to see to help the Ukrainian LIOs?
So come to the services working group and listen to the analysis. The short version is that we have a policy instructing us to do transfers under certain conditions. No, you're telling us to not do some of those transfers, right? So if we don't do those transfers, that may be a violation of the policy. And normally, the community do not like if I violate policy, right? You hold me true to the letter in the policy. So that may be the distinction, but listen to Athena's analysis of that rather than mine.
I think it's interpretation of the policy and how the transfer lock would be implemented, but that's something we'll see after services. All right, so I think we're almost out of time. Definitely.
2 minutes.
We have 2 minutes. So Rüdiger, we're going to keep it very short.
Yes, well, completely different topic. I wonder whether the status field in the delegated extended file, as it is defined and operated by the RIPE NCC, is something that should get some attention in the policy address, in a address policy working group. I noted on Monday evening that ISOC was reporting about some confusion using the data. Kind of, as far as I can tell, there is not really a very clear documentation and, well, okay, certainly little attention to what's being done in that file. Couple of years ago, I think everybody was thinking, yes, that's statistics that the RIRs are putting out somewhere, and well, okay, it doesn't have kind of a real meaning. At the time of the Dubai RIPE meeting, policy changes in RPKI by the RIRs actually provided arguments that the delegated extended file actually has to be taken serious. At the Reykjavik RIPE meeting, I had to report about operational problems with the file. Well, okay, quite obviously, at least ISOC people who should be knowledgeable get confused about the status field. And I think there is a possibility that whatever which RIR is documenting in that field is probably something that should be viewed with a policy, as a policy point of view.
All right, thank you very much for the feedback. Definitely need to have that discussion on the mailing list, Rudiger. So we need to have some more background info on that. Then, with that being said, I would like to thank everybody here on the. So I would like to thank everybody present here on the working group session, and we'll all see you on the mailing list and at Rotterdam RIPE 86. Thank you very much.
Bye. All right. Good morning, everyone. Afternoon, I think. Yes. Afternoon. I'm going to give the stragglers and other people doing call deciding whether they want to join IP6 or here another minute to come in. So take your seats, get comfortable, put any small items underneath the seat in front of you, and this is a non-smoking session. This is Serbia. I have to point this.
Morning, Remco. Will, what have you done?
This was validated by Florence, you know.
Okay, so I guess I have both of you to thank for this, I guess. All right, let's get the show going. Welcome to the Connect working group, your second most favorite working group of the RIPE meeting. My name is Remco van Mook. I am co-chair of this merry gathering together with Will van Gulik and Florence, who just briefly showed her face over to the side. There she is. Hey, Florence. Good to see you.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, so Florence is unfortunately unable to join us physically here, but she'll be looking at the proceedings online. Let's see, what do we have? I have a slide deck, I think. Let's see, what else do we have? Welcome. Scribe appointment. We have Guy from the RIPE NCC who's agreed to be our slide. The agenda, you've all seen the agenda. There is one additional small item that we're going to use put in at the end, which is something that came in through the address policy working group this morning. So we'll briefly touch on that. Proposed session format. As you may know, we've agreed a while ago that we would have some of these, part of these connect fully public and some of them a little bit less so, in order to be able to open up like more business-oriented discussion. There is no such topic on the agenda this time, so we're just going to be acting like a regular working group in this instance. Then on to housekeeping. So I trust you've all read the minutes. Can I see a show of hands who also noticed the embarrassing typo in the first sentence? There was no typo. Congratulations. Nice try though. So I take it no one else has any comments. In that case, it's all approved. Then, so thank you for the RIPE NCC for compiling them. We have 3 presentations today. One by Thomas from France IX about 400 gig Ethernet in the field. We have a Euro IX update done by Maria this time, because she gracefully offered to stand in for Bijal, who couldn't join. And we have an update on PeeringDB by Arnold. And I still don't know what I don't know what this is. So I would propose that we just get started with Thomas.
We should do that. Thomas,
yes,
I guess the floor is yours. And I hope, we're upgrading, moving from 25 gig last time, and now it's 400 gig. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Will. Okay. So yes, that's the big button. You can't miss it. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Thomas Delaby. I'm a network engineer at France IX. And today I will talk about 400 gig Ethernet as deployed in the field. And I will explain how we think it's going to be a set of game-changing technologies in the near future. So a quick agenda. I'm going to introduce who we are, who is France IX in general, what technologies we are using for metro distance transmission right now, why we are changing them for 400 gig Ethernet, how to use one specific technology, which is 400 gig ZR, which is the most interesting of the set of 400 gig Ethernet technologies. I'll briefly introduce you to more 400 gig technologies and conclude. So this is a map of services offered by France IX. France IX is the largest IXP in France. It was founded in 2010. And 2 years ago, we merged with Réseau Pôle in Lyon, and we made a few regional deployments. So Marseille is way back before Réseau Pôle, and we launched Toulouse and Lille recently. We're offering various services, peering, of course, hosting, VLANs, and this is a map that shows the service catalog, not the actual infrastructure. As you could guess, the green links are being redundant and built on diverse waves. A bit about traffic. So we're hitting the 2 terabits bar. So we're quite happy with that. And the growth seems to be steady enough. So that's pretty fun. Jumping in, so this is a view of our global MPLS domain. It's quite complex. That's the internal weather map. Actually, you won't see this on the website so that it doesn't scare anyone. On the left-hand side, this is the Paris platform. The Paris platform is built upon a set of 2 core locations in the rectangles and a few satellite locations that are connected to the cores via dark fibers, redundant dark fibers, and diverse, of course. So dark fibers run from 2 to 75 kilometers or so, and we light them ourselves. We've always been doing that. Historically, it was N times 10 gig DWDM optics, and we moved progressively to expanding technologies to get 100 gig waves working on this backbone. Highest capacity links in the long distance can go up to 600 gigs. So in order to achieve this whole thing, we need performant and reliable optical solutions for long distance. So that's why I'm emphasizing everything here. So now and then we were using OTN expanders. So I guess some of you already know how this works, and if not, here's a quick reminder. So expander in the white box here takes your slow and gray optical signals from your IP equipment and converts it into high power and high speed optical signals on the line side. They shoot it with high power so that they can reach long distances without amplification. This is basically a time division multiplexing device. And it uses basically 2 main components for doing that: SF4 optics for client side and CFP2 with custom chips inside in order to make the magic on the line side work. And it's all based on OTN, Optical Transport Network, which is a standardized protocol for encapsulating all your client signals into a line signal that's suitable for exchange between expanders. So this is a view of expanders in their natural environment in France IX's racks. So we're using 2 types of expanders: Nokia 1830 PSIMs and Corian Groove G30. So Corian was bought by Infinera lastly. We've got different cards, different layouts of client ports for different needs. On the line side, we have different modulations possible so that we can reach farther distances, or we can pass through specific filters, maybe old filters that were too narrow to accept wide signals of today. As you can see here, cabling starts to be quite a challenge because there's all MPO around, and keeping track of all those connections is quite a challenge as well in the information system. We've got Netbox running, and creating all those links in DCIM is very, very time consuming. So why ultimately will we stop using expanders? So we're not ditching them, of course. They work very well. They were great technology for years, but we won't deploy more expanders. The first reason for this is cost. This costs a lot. I will give more details about this after that. They consume a lot of power. They're of great complexity. There are a lot of active components. I showed you a few of them in the last slide. And each of them can fail at some point. So you've got the cards, the optics, the line, and troubleshooting is very hard, even harder when you have multiple components and you don't know which one is faulty. Cabling, as I said, is a nightmare because MPO is expensive, MPO is thick, MPO is really not adapted to high density setups. IP hardware is already 400 gig ready and maybe underutilized because of those Mook expanders. And the footprint is not optimized as well, because when you want to scale capacity, well, you have to scale rack units as well, which is not really optimal for us. So we're going to do 400 gig in the backbone, and more importantly, 400 gig ZR. So the model for this is to plug directly 400 gig colored optics into your routers, as you did with DWDM 10G optics. And you just have to add EDFAs to boost the signal on the line, but I will talk about it later. Costs, we observe that costs can be down 43% for the first 400 gig and up to 53% when you reach high capacities, and even more than that after that, because it's linear and the EDFA cost is diluted into the optical cost. Power consumption is decreased by 90%. So that's a huge leap forward. And this is, we could say it's a green technology for this. There are less active components, so we tackle a lot of complexity. There are less points of failure. Cabling is standard, and IP hardware is really happy to operate at 400 gig. You don't waste your cages, your 400 gig cages with 100 gig optics. So it's really good for this. In order to build a 400 gig ZR link, you need optics. So there's quite a wide range of optics available today. Competition is around the corner, compatibility broadens. Those optics are quite special because they transmit at -8 dBm and they receive at around -21 maximum. So that's a short optical budget. You need amplification. And OSNR is also important here. EDFA amplifiers, you need to do your homework in order to understand how they work. I will explain this later. And you need a regular DWDM mux, but you have to check your channel passband. I can answer some questions about this later. EDFA learned by experience. We're not optical engineers. We learned everything by experience. I would be more than happy to take your remarks, suggestions, corrections, etc. We've seen that most EDFAs have settable gain. You can put the gain between 0 and 30 dB usually, depending on application model. And one building block is that gain is flat across all the spectrum. There is a mode which is called AGC, automatic gain control, that keeps the gain constant, whichever power you input into the EDFA. But an EDFA cannot raise its output power to the sky. There is a limit, so the total combined power is limited, and that's what the graph here shows. The output will steadily increase with the input power, but will stop eventually. And the gain then cannot be automatically controlled because of the saturation, so will decrease with input power. This means that if you have a channel that is way higher than others, it will eat up a little bit of your budget in the non-saturated area, and you don't want that. And you even more don't want that because a saturated EDFA is dangerous when channels drop. Imagine you're in the saturated area here, and you've got a few channels that decide to go away for whatever reason. Your IP hardware goes crazy, I don't know. And then what the situation will be this on the lower part of the slide. You will shift the point of functioning of the system to the left, and then gain will increase. Gain will increase in an uncontrolled way because you don't control how many channels are dropping. Gain will increase means power will increase on the remaining channels, and then you can blind your optics. So you really, really don't want that. You don't want a saturated EDFA. You need to avoid this. A real-world deployment of 400 gig ZR. This is, well, I think you can see it better. You can zoom in on the PDF. Those are values, real values of the real deployment between Interaction Par 5 and Data for Paris Saclay in Paris, about 60 kilometers of dark fiber. OSNR is quite good. It's only degraded by the single stage amplifier we've put in order to boost the signal. And you can see that TX power and channel numbers are tunable from CLI. So that's important features you have to check with your vendor in order to make it work. And Eric's power is quite irrelevant here because you can change it as you pair your wheel with the amplifier. What is important is the OSNR because the limit for 400 gig ZR link to work is 26 dB. That's the only hard floor you get with this technology. A bit more about 400 gig Ethernet. I promised that I wouldn't talk only about 400 gig ZR. So there is also ER8. ER8 goes up to 40 kilometers in the band 1310 nanometers, so only one per fiber pair. But the price tag is down 75% compared to a regular muxpander that you would put in place. So that's a great deal. And you've got LR4 that goes up to 10 kilometers with the same wavelength band. And the price tag is down 90%. So for your backbone interconnections, when you want a cheap start, well, you just buy them and put them into your router, and off you go. There is no need for a DFA here. It just works. Conclusions, we observe that 400 gig Ethernet is more than ready for production. It really works. It's not a lab thing anymore. Your backbone will love it because it's cheap. It consumes a lot less power. It reduces the complexity of the system, so it's better maintenance, better working. The NOC is going to love it, etc. For us, it lowers significantly the bar for high capacities in your backbone because where another technology was relevant before, now you can just put 400 gig ZR and usually the speed is higher than before. It means also that people will be able to roll out high capacities at a lower price tag, so backbones will grow easily. The only thing we don't have return of experience on is reliability. We've been running this for 6 months without any problem, but maybe in the future we'll see how it goes and we'll come back to make a new presentation about reliability of 400 gig technologies. And with this, I'm finished. Feel free to follow our Twitter accounts where we post a lot of news about our installations, our regions, etc. And yeah, and I'm always available for questions and remarks and so on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. That was really insightful. I'd love to look up some acronyms here and there, but for the rest, it was really insightful. I see we've got a queue with questions. Will, please state your name and affiliation.
Hello, it's Will Hargrave from LONAP. Thank you for your presentation. I wondered if, rather than using separate MUX and EDFA combination, whether you had considered using some of these boxes where all that hard work is done for you, i.e. the 1U box includes amplifier and dispersion compensation and all this other stuff.
So we've been studying that, and we found that generally those boxes are far more expensive than just building the solution yourself. And they have a lot of features that you don't necessarily need. For instance, a lot of them have tunable DCM, tunable dispersion compensation modules, in order to make PAM4 100 gig optics work. But we don't need that because we don't want PAM4 100 gig. It's too complex, it's too costly. We already have IP hardware with 400 gig cages, so.
I find myself I'm in that situation because I'm using the 100 gig PAM4 and that's working. But of course, you're correct that this is not required at 400 gig ZR, right?
We just made the jump and yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Next one, please.
Stavros from AMSEX. Thomas, great presentation. Thanks a lot for giving us those insights. I have a quick question to you. Have you considered for the Paris metro area to just don't even use the DFAs if you have less distance between the data centers? I think Okay, reality for the ZR optics goes 80 kilometers. I think it's less, of course, around 20, 25 kilometers. So if you have two data centers close by, maybe you can just, in the dark fiber and some passive maxes, you can connect the boxes directly.
Yes,
have you considered that? Tested?
That's something I didn't mention, but EDFA is actually not required.
Yes,
so you've
exactly.
got enough budget to do like 10 kilometers with a standard, optic. And actually, we will make a deployment between Telehouse 2 and Interaction Par 5. And one of the dark fibers is so good that we don't even need an EDFA.
Awesome.
So we'll just plug the optics in, and that's all. And we'll start with a first link with ER8, because since it's so cheap, it lowers the bar for entry.
Awesome. I'm looking forward for the next RIPE meeting where you're going to share some more details on that and experiences. Thanks a lot.
Do that. Thank you.
Next, please. Hi, Rick Nelson with VIE. Thanks a lot. This was a really good talk. Do you have any experience with the 4x100 breakout type optics like quad SN connectors where you can get much higher 100 gig E density, but you need like really tiny fingers or something to get to the
actually, we have some, I think I can show you maybe in the beginning. Yeah, that's quite, okay. Bear with me. Okay, so there is one node here, actually. The TH2 node here is connected with 4 times DR4 plus optics. And on the other side, it's FR1 optics. So this is useful, but you need to replace all your client optics on your muxponders in order to make this work. So that's a huge cost. And if you can switch directly to 400 gig ZR, then, well, it's better because we still have to qualify those optics in the muxponders. We don't know if it's going to work. And usually optical vendors are a bit slow implementing new optical modules in their muxponders. So not many of them, I think Coriant does it, but Nokia doesn't do it yet. So
thanks.
And I'm closing the queue after this one.
This is Howard from Wix. I do have a question regarding your operational experience with the ZR optics. To my knowledge, they need a higher power budget to be run on your network equipment. So did you have any problems getting them running? And when they run, do you see them operating at a higher temperature than, for example, LR4, or do you not see any difference?
There is definitely a higher temperature with 400 gig optics in general, not only ZR ones. I think SR8 and DR4 are getting very, very hot as well, like 75 degrees or something. So that's not something specific to ZR optics. And as for thermal dissipation and power consumption, switches are designed to do it. On our core routers, we have a rule. We have to use the first row, the upper row, for ZR plus optics, and they are not supported on the lower row because thermal dissipation is not symmetrical between the two rows. So that's something to look for on your equipment. Can it take ZR optics? Yes, most probably. Can it take ZR optics in any cage? Probably not.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that was really insightful. Thank you again, Thomas.
Thank you very much.
And next up, we've got the URIX update with Maria Isabella coming to tell us what's going on. Thank you.
Yes, I'm okay. Yes, let me just. Okay, can you hear me? Fine, okay, thank you. Well, thank you, and as he said, I'm not visual. Visual, unfortunately, cannot be here this time, so I am just doing this presentation on behalf of Visual, but all the credit goes for her, and make this just for her. If you have questions, of course, I can take them. If I don't know them, I will ask Visual. Okay, for the newcomers, what's the EuroIX? The EuroIX is an association of internet exchanges, not only in Europe, although it's EuroIX, but also in the rest of the world. We have around 70 members right now. You can see all the members in the slide, and most of them, although are in Europe. You, depending on where you live, you may be familiar with one of them. Any of them can be very nice people anyway. And the EuroIX Association is not just the members, it's also the patrons, of course. We wouldn't do anything without our patrons, so thank you very much to our patrons. You can see our patrons in this slide too. Thank you for supporting us. Okay, so what does the EuroIX Association do for the internet exchanges? It's classified in three things. We have services, we have events, of course, to share information, and we have also tools and community projects. For the events, we usually meet twice a year, except if there is a pandemic, then we go online, of course. And we have gone to face-to-face meeting again in the last year, so we have met twice already. But it's not only the forums, we also have workshops that can go back to back with the forums or separately and organized by one of the members, and hackathons. And we also organize virtual workshops around topics that are interesting for the internet exchanges and for the members of the internet exchanges. Regarding the services, the EuroIX Association publishes a couple of reports. One of the reports is public, is the EuroIX, the European IXP report that has information that is available in the website, and it is useful to know what's the evolution of IXPs in Europe. And another report that is internal for the IXP members, which is the benchmarking report. In the IXP benchmarking report, we have questions about financial, commercial, and technical issues or technical questions, let's say. And then we can see there with all the aggregated information and anonymized information we have, we can just see where we are as internet exchanges, how others are doing things, how is the average for something, which is also useful for internet exchange managers. We have newsletters sent to the members, mailing lists to share information. And regarding the tools and community projects, the community project that you may know probably is the IXP database. The IXP database is like the point where all the data from internet exchanges is aggregated. You can just visit it here, and I will go into details of the IXPDB later. We also have the peering toolbox. The peering toolbox is like a place to put all the information together about peering. Why peering is cool, why you should peer. This is mostly for newcomers, for people who want to start with the peering or in this world and don't know many things. It's a place where you can find all the information together coming from different sources. We also have a fellowship and Mentor IX programs, which help other internet exchanges that may have difficulties or may be just starting with that. There is a mentoring IX that can mentor the MMG and help them succeed. We have a route server large BGP communities list, nothing to do with a mailing list. It's a list of large BGP communities that is like not mandatory, but recommended to use in all the internet exchanges to facilitate having a common ground for understanding. So if you are a member of an internet exchange and you are using a large BGP community at that internet exchange, it's good that you go to another internet exchange and you find the same. This is what we do with this list. And it's also published in the website. And we're also working on new IXP films. I don't know if you have seen the famous video of the how the internet works. It's all about peering. This video dates from a long time ago, and now we're working on renewing a little bit the videos. But the idea is the same, is to be like, not teaching, but letting regular people know what an internet exchange is, what peering is, what the internet is, and how it works in a simple manner. Regarding our members, I'm not going to go in depth into the news of all the members, but we have some updates by some of our members. For instance, congratulate Topics because they are celebrating their 20th anniversary this year, and they are celebrating it with a new game for interconnection that you can play in the link that you can see here. The presentation is in the website. And there is a new IXP announced in Genoa in collaboration with other partners that you can also find in the link here. Hispanics is connecting their 5th POP in Madrid. They have 4. They are connecting the 5th one with data 4. Interland is having a peak of traffic of 400 gigabit per second with 130 ASNs connected, and it's announced it's working with several community projects. For instance, Interland is one of the sponsors of the fellowship program. And it has announced a partnership agreement with TICIX to enable Romanian networks to connect to that. And speaking of interconnections, BNIX and LUKIX have also announced their interconnection. They are allowing members of one of the internet exchanges to connect to the other internet exchange for a small fee, reducing the latency times between the two countries. For links, London 1 has now a 6 terabit per second peak traffic with a total of 7 terabit per second in all links POPs, and a new links POP at Iron Mountain Data Center Zone 1. Internationally speaking, Links has launched IXP in Nairobi in Kenya, and it's creating a regional hub in East Asia. It's also partnershiping with the Kenyan IX Africa, and Links and NAP Africa have announced this collaboration. And there's also a growth in the Links JetX to 300 and more than 300 gigabit per second. Regarding service developments and with the collaboration of AM6 and DKIX, Links also announces the new analytics features in IX API. France IX, you have seen the presentation before. It has 400 gigabit per second ports available now. It has also merged with Resopol, and Lyonix is now France IX Lyon. The backbone is moving to 400 gig ZR, and there are more than 100 gig ports in Paris. The traffic peaks, you have seen Paris, 185 terabit per second, Lyon has 64 gigabit, and Marseille, 270 gigabit per second. Also, TAUX, the members of Toulouse Internet Exchange, moved to France IX Toulouse, and France IX Lille opened. And regarding DKIX Leipzig was launched in October, quite recently. RFA is in November 15th. And it's available at the data center in Leipzig with, I'm not able to pronounce the name, but a new data center in Leipzig, let's say. And DKIX Frankfurt is now giving 800 gig available for the platform to increase the efficiency. More news from DKIX, it's celebrating the 10th anniversary of the UAE-IX in Dubai with a famous peering cruise. I don't know what the peering cruise is, and I don't see the attachment, sorry for the mistake. And DKIX was honored also recently with the best Internet Exchange Operator Career Award for the 7th time. So congratulations to DKIX. Regarding the IXPDB status, we have the roadmap of the IXPDB. The IXPDB has been like a project for many years, and it's evolving, and it's increasing the visibility of things and improving it. Time to time, we're doing improvements. The idea of the IXPDB is that it takes data, we don't have someone manually entering the data in the IXPDB. It's something that is taken from the exchanges directly through a JSON file that each exchange is offering to the IXPDB with a JSON schema. So the idea to have this is that it facilitates, it's always updated information, of course, if the Internet Exchange updates it. And the idea is that more and more exchanges adopt this schema. When we have this structured data, we enable this data to have visualizations with maps and charts and whatever it's needed. to have dynamic filters and to download these data sets. From structured data, we go to building data pipelines, and we're able to collect and organize all the data there and encourage, as I said, other IXPs to have it. I think that there are nearly 300 IXPs with this JSON schema. If others are not doing it, it would be worth doing it. And there's data validation coming soon, just to avoid mistakes. The next steps are not to share only the number of ASNs, the ASNs and the interfaces in the exchanges, but also the traffic, in order to have aggregated graphs and have trends and see how the traffic around the world in all the internet exchanges is going. To enable the comparison tools with more features, to develop a pricing API also for commercial purposes, and identify useful third-party data. And of course, the IXPDB wouldn't be what it is without its sponsors again. So thank you to the sponsors of the IXPDB for supporting it. If you want to be a sponsor of the IXPDB, you can contact the secretariat at ixf.net, the Internet Exchange Federation, at Internet Exchange Associations Federation. More information. We have a mailing list for users if you want it. You have the link here. You have the JSON schema published in GitHub. It's public. You can go there and see how it is and use it if you're in an internet exchange. The API is also available for the IXPDB. You can see it in the link you see in the slide. There is a website where you can query, compare, see what is in the region, in another region, if they have manners or not have manners, and several pieces of information there. And you can also contact the IXPDB team. And with that, I thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions.
All right, well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Any questions for Maria or Bijal for that matter? Bijal, how are you? Well, I will get that answer at some point, I'm sure. No, nothing online? Oh, hi, Bijal.
Hi, Bijal.
Excellent. I guess that's it. Thank you so much, Maria.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Arnold with an update about PeeringDB. Arnold, go for it.
Is it working? Yeah, it is. Yeah, hello, I'm Arnold Nippe from PeeringDB, and I want to give a short update on PeeringDB. Now I have, this is a, so what is PeeringDB? PeeringDB actually is the database with all the information you need if you want to interconnect. That means we have information about the networks or ASNs. We have information about internet exchange points, and last but not least, there is also information about facilities. And these information do not stand alone. They are nicely interconnect. So, and if you want to have an interconnection, you definitely should register in PeeringDB, your network, your IXP, and also your facility. And who is running PeeringDB? PeeringDB actually is an association in the US, but the people behind PeeringDB are almost 100% done by voluntary work. So these are the what we call committees in companies. You would call them departments who take care of PeeringDB. First, we have our support department, which we call admin committee. Then it's operation who take care for the running of all the servers and the network connection. Then we have our marketing committee, which we call outreach. And then we also have product development, which is done in the product committee. So as mentioned already, all the people behind PeeringDB, I guess we are meanwhile between 20 and 30, I do not exactly know the figures, are volunteers, and we are looking for fresh blood in all of the 3 committees, in the admin committee, and here we are especially looking for people who speak other languages as English, because more and more are coming, or most of the people using PeeringDB are not necessarily speaking English. For the outreach committee, most of the people working for us are heavily technical oriented, and for the outreach committee, it would really be nice to have people with marketing experience. The operations committee is a small and highly trusted small group, as you may know, because they are responsible for all the servers, and we are also looking for new volunteers over there. And if you have an experience with containers, that would be a plus. So if you are interested, just shoot an emails to the stewards. The stewards comprise the heads of all the committees and the PeeringDB board. So this is what PeeringDB does. You see a steep increase since 2016. In 2016, we had a new graphical user interface, a new DB behind it. And since then, you can see that we more or less have around 10 to 12,000 tickets per year, which has to be done or goes through the admin committee. What we did in the last times is also we want to involve more volunteer contributions. So far, most of the development, the feature implementation has been done by a company, by 20C, and we now focus more on volunteer contributions. So we had security changes from Amazon, UX changes from Google's, and very other changes from individuals. The recent product improvements was for the AC committee. We have better support tools. Then there is, I guess Maria also mentioned it, the so-called IXF JSON file, which contains information about all the participants at in Internet Exchange Points. And the Internet Exchange Points are able to say us, okay, you may pull this information about our participants, and then we match this with what the networks have put in to PeeringDB. We also made it more visible which network are peering with route servers, and we have implemented organizational policy features which enable multi-factor authentication, which is highly recommended to do so. And what organizations also currently now can do is to limit access for new users to specific email domains, and also revalidate the accounts periodically. We have also changed the main URL to www.peeringdb.com, which is also enforced, which caused for sometimes a lot of issues because some of the users had only peeringdb.com in their scripts, and when they called PeeringDB, when we did the change, they ran into error, or not even into an error, they simply didn't give or get any output. With every release, we do a lot of bug fixes and use small features. I do not know when we introduce that, but we also now have a feature that you can add a small logo to your organization, and this is much accepted. You also now see when you had updates to the NetIX update, the NetFrac update, and POC update. NetIX just to say what it is. This is the connection to an internet exchange point, and network means your connections at a facility. We also did authentication changes. We introduced API keys in release 2.26. And the main reason behind it is that we run into issues with the service. We saw a lot of scripts running wild, and this is also, of course, increases the fee which we have to pay for the operations of our service. And therefore, we now are substantially rate limit unauthenticated API queries. The reason also behind is we want to keep PeeringDB for operational purposes. And if you just want to play around, PeeringDB definitely is not the place to go. If you have an operational interest, you can still query the database. If you still run into operational issues, even with an authenticated API queries, just reach out to support at peeringdb.com, and the backend engineer will look into this issue and try to optimize your setup then. I already mentioned that account security 2FA, nothing to add, please use it. Then we introduced so-called self-selection fields, both for exchanges and facilities, and I see I'm running out of time. We also improved searching, which still is an issue because most of the searches has to be exactly how you want to search something. This is an ongoing issue to improve that. Another point where PeeringDB is not very good at, and that's because we base our support on volunteers, is documentation. Nevertheless, we updated the documentation, and what we now have is a schedule you see when we will do new releases. You see that we already planned new releases up to March of next year. We did a user survey. The outcome we will publish soon, and we have to have money for running PeeringDB, and we take the money from our general sponsors. Thank you to all of them. And that's it. I still have 14 seconds left, 12, 11. And of course, if there are any questions, please come up.
Thank you, Arnold. I didn't see any question online. No.
And I'm around until Friday. And if you have a special question or question generally on PeeringDB, just reach out to me.
Thank you very much. So now we didn't mention that in the slides, but we have an AOB, and I think oh yeah, Sander is going to tell us about yeah, you can use this mic.
Yeah, so during the address policy session, one item that came up was the free space in the IPv4 pool for IXPs, which seems to have some relation to this working group. Can you show the graph? I think it's the next slide. Yeah. So this is this is how the size of the pool. You can see it was going down up to somewhere in 2019. Then a /16 got added, and it jumped up again, and it just kept continuing in the same way. So according to the NCC, the current pool will last about 7 years from now, so 2029. The question to this group is that enough? Are we done with V4 into 2029, or do we need to have some top-up procedure? And my personal suggestion would be like, because now every time we need to top up the pool, we need to write a new policy. If we want to keep this pool alive, to make a policy that just allows the NCC, like if the pool drops below this level, feel free to use some of the reclaimed space to top it up again, so they don't have to come back to the community for every top up. But that only would make sense if there's actually a need for it. So question to this group: is this an important pool? Is this something we want to keep alive? And if so, is somebody willing to write a policy for it, or did I just volunteer?
So I have also Arnold, who was raising first, and then I can leave Remco.
So Sana, I guess it's only related to IPv4, huh? So I guess we should be able to use IPv6 at an IXP by 2029 only.
Remco.
So I do, yeah, I do something with IXPs in my day job, and I also do. I mean, I occasionally do hobby with address policy. Looking at the graph, I've done something at the end of 2012, and I did something in 2019 related to policy development around the IXP pool. I get why Marco brought this up as the policy officer in the meeting. However, I think spending once every roughly 8 years reevaluating where we are seems just fine with me. So I mean, I would of course love everyone's opinion on the mailing list. We have a mailing list, people. Please use it. Please subscribe. I would say, you know what? I'm happy to let this run for a while. And if by the time we're hitting 2027, and then maybe we should start looking into what we want to do at that point. For me, at least 2029 in the current environment feels very, very far away.
Yeah. Anybody object to that? Otherwise, I'll just like we'll put on the mailing list, of course. But
we'll take that on the mailing list.
Yeah, whatever the outcome is. But if people feel this is a good solution, I will wait to see what happens on the mailing list and then take it back to the address policy working group.
Yes, we should do that. Thank you. So thank you, Sander, for this update. With this, I guess we are reaching the end of this session. I thank you all very, very much. I will remind you, you should rate the talks. And with that, I hope to see you all on the mailing list and at the next RIPE meeting, physically or virtually. See you. Okay, bye. Thank you.